Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. That autumn morning at my veterinary clinic in Aurora started like any other. Max, my German shepherd, usually stayed quietly in my office during appointments. But today, he decided to make things interesting. "Gianna, your 3 o'clock is here," Sarah, my receptionist, called out. I was finishing up some paperwork when I heard the commotion. The waiting room erupted in chaos as Max burst through my partially open office door. He charged straight at a gorgeous husky being led in by an equally stunning blonde woman. "Max, no!" I shouted, dropping my files. The husky's leash tangled with Max's as they circled each other, growling. The blonde woman remained surprisingly calm. Her movements were precise, controlled, military training I'd later learn. She stepped between the dogs with the confidence of someone who'd faced far worse. "Easy there, soldier," she spoke to her husky in a commanding yet gentle voice. I grabbed Max's collar, our hands brushing as we separated the dogs. Her touch sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. Up close, her blue eyes were mesmerizing, like Arctic ice under sunlight. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, feeling my face flush. "He's usually better behaved." "No harm done," she smiled, extending her hand. "I'm Rose Russell. This troublemaker is Storm." Her handshake was firm, confident. "Dr. Gianna Mitchell," I replied, still flustered. "And this is Max, who apparently forgot his manners today." We got the dogs settled, and I conducted Storm's checkup. Rose watched intently, asking intelligent questions about Storm's recovery from a recent surgery. The way she cared for her pet was endearing. "Let me make this up to you," I found myself saying as we finished. "There's a great coffee shop around the corner." Rose's eyes sparkled with interest. "Only if you tell me how a vet ends up with such a rebellious assistant." What started as an apologetic coffee turned into hours of conversation. Rose told me about Storm's rescue from a bad situation, her security consulting work, and her love for animals. I shared stories about Max, my clinic, and my weekend bartending gig to help pay off student loans. The autumn sun was setting when we finally left the coffee shop. Walking back to the clinic, our shoulders brushed occasionally. Each touch felt electric, meaningful. "Maybe I'll bring Storm by for a follow-up," Rose said, lingering by her car. "Maybe you should," I replied, trying to sound professional despite my racing heart. As I watched her drive away, Max nudged my hand with his nose. "Don't look so smug," I told him. "Although I suppose I should thank you for causing trouble today." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Rose's smile, her quiet confidence, the way she handled the dogfight with such grace. Little did I know, this chance encounter would turn my carefully ordered life completely upside down. A week after the clinic incident, I was working my usual Friday night shift at the Blue Moon. The bar job wasn't glamorous, but it helped pay off those crushing student loans. I was mixing a Manhattan when Sarah, my receptionist who also waitressed here, nudged me. "Your dog whisperer just walked in," she smirked. I nearly dropped the cocktail shaker. Rose stood at the entrance, scanning the room with professional attention. She wore black cargo pants and a fitted navy blazer that highlighted her athletic frame. Her blonde hair was pulled back, revealing sharp cheekbones that caught the neon lights. "You never mentioned you worked here," Rose said, sliding onto a bar stool. "Didn't want to scare away a potential client," I laughed, trying to hide my nervousness. "What brings you to this side of town?" "I'm the new head of security," she replied, showing her credentials. "The owner hired my firm after last month's incidents." The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Now I'd be seeing her every weekend, watching her move through the crowd with that confident stride. It was both thrilling and torturous. That night, I watched her work. Rose had a way of diffusing situations before they escalated. A gentle hand on someone's shoulder, a quiet word in their ear, and potential troublemakers would suddenly remember their manners. "You're good at this," I told her during a quiet moment. "People are like animals sometimes," she winked. "They respond to calm authority." As weeks passed, we fell into a routine. Rose would check the premises before my shift, we'd exchange glances throughout the night, and when my shift ended at 2, she'd insist on walking me home. "It's literally my job to ensure everyone's safety," she'd say. Those walks became the highlight of my weeks. We'd talk about everything and nothing, her military service, my dreams of opening an animal sanctuary, our shared love of bad sci-fi movies. Sometimes our hands would brush, sending electricity through my body. One night, a drunk customer got handsy. Before I could react, Rose materialized beside him. "The lady's not interested," she said quietly, her voice carrying steel beneath its softness. The way she handled it, firm but professional, made my heart race. Later, during our walk, I caught her stealing glances at me. "My hero," I teased. "Just doing my job," she smiled, but her eyes said something different. We started meeting outside work too. Dog walks with Max and Storm became Sunday traditions. Rose would bring coffee. I'd pack treats for the dogs. Sometimes our fingers would touch while passing the cup, lingering longer than necessary. Sarah noticed the change in me. "You're humming at work," she observed one day at the clinic. "Am not," I protested, but I was. The tension built slowly, like a storm gathering strength. Every shared laugh, every accidental touch, every long look across the crowded bar added another layer. We were dancing around something, both afraid to take the first step. One night, as we approached my apartment, Rose caught my hand. "Gianna?" A car alarm went off nearby, shattering the moment. We jumped apart, laughing nervously. "See you tomorrow?" she asked, her voice husky. "Always," I replied, watching her walk away into the night. I stood at my door long after she'd disappeared, Max whining impatiently beside me. Something was shifting between us. Something that terrified and excited me in equal measure, but neither of us was ready to name it yet. The night everything changed started like any other at the Blue Moon. The autumn rain drummed against the windows, and the bar was packed with people seeking shelter from the storm. I was mixing drinks on autopilot, stealing glances at Rose as she made her rounds. "Busy night," Sarah commented, dropping off another drink order. That's when I noticed them, 3 men in dark hoodies, moving too purposefully through the crowd. Rose saw them too. Our eyes met across the room, and her expression shifted from casual to alert in an instant. Everything happened fast after that. The first man pulled a gun, shouting for everyone to get down. The second jumped the bar, shoving me against the register. The third stood watch at the door. "Empty it," he growled, pressing cold metal against my ribs. Time seemed to slow. I could hear screams, breaking glass, the rain outside. Then I saw Rose moving through the chaos like a ghost. She took out the door guard with a swift strike to the throat. The man at the register noticed too late. "Behind you!" he shouted to his partner. Rose was already in motion. She tackled the first gunman as his weapon discharged into the ceiling. They crashed into a table, sending glasses shattering across the floor. The man pressing me to the register turned, giving me the opening I needed. I grabbed the soda sprayer and blasted his face with carbonated water. He stumbled back, cursing. Rose was there in an instant, disarming him with a move that looked like a deadly dance. "Stay down." Her voice carried the full weight of military command. The whole thing lasted maybe 2 minutes. When the police arrived, they found 3 would-be robbers zip-tied on the floor, Rose standing guard with their own weapon trained on them. The next few hours blurred together. Police statements, insurance forms, concerned phone calls from the owner. Through it all, Rose stayed close, her presence steady and reassuring. "You okay?" she kept asking, her eyes scanning me for injuries. "Thanks to you," I managed, still shaking slightly. It was nearly dawn when we finally left the police station. The rain had softened to a gentle mist, making the streetlights blur like watercolors. We stood under the precinct's awning, neither wanting to leave. "That was some impressive bartending back there," Rose smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "That was some impressive everything back there," I countered. "Where did you learn moves like that?" "Special forces," she shrugged, "though I've never had to use them to protect someone. She trailed off, her blue eyes intense. The air between us crackled with unspoken words. My heart hammered against my ribs, louder than the rain. Rose stepped closer, her hand coming up to brush wet hair from my face. "I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you," she whispered. "I'm not sure who moved first, maybe we both did." Her lips met mine in the rain, soft at first, then hungry with relief and release. She tasted like adrenaline and possibility, her hands tangling in my hair as she pulled me closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. The rain had soaked through our clothes, but neither of us noticed or cared. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," Rose admitted, her forehead resting against mine. "What took you so long?" I smiled, pulling her back in for another kiss. Later, as we shared a cab home, our fingers intertwined, I realized something had shifted irreversibly. The night's danger had stripped away our careful pretenses, leaving only truth behind. Whatever came next, there was no going back, and I didn't want to. The weeks following the robbery brought changes I never expected. Rose and I started dating properly, though dating felt too simple a word for what was developing between us. We spent every free moment together, learning each other's rhythms and routines. One night, curled up on my couch with Max and Storm at our feet, Rose finally opened up about her past. "Afghanistan, 3 tours," she said quietly, absently running her fingers through my hair. "The last one, things went wrong." I stayed silent, giving her space to continue. The TV flickered silently in the background, casting blue shadows across her face. "We lost half the unit in an ambush," she continued. "I got most of them out, but the cost." Her hand trembled slightly against my shoulder. That explained the nightmares. I'd noticed how she'd sometimes wake up gasping, her body rigid with remembered fear. The way loud noises could make her freeze momentarily, eyes scanning for threats. "That's why I started the security firm," she explained. "Needed something that used my skills but let me choose my battles." I reached up, tracing the scar along her collarbone, a souvenir from that last mission. "Is that why you're so good with Storm?" She smiled sadly. "He was a military dog, retired after an IED incident. We were both a bit broken. Seemed fitting we found each other." The pieces of Rose's puzzle were falling into place, her hypervigilance, her need to protect, the way she could switch from playful to deadly serious in an instant. "What about you?" she asked, changing the subject. "Any war stories from the dating front?" I laughed softly. "Just the usual disasters. My last relationship ended when she couldn't handle my crazy hours. Before that, well, let's just say my family's traditional values made things complicated." Rose pulled me closer. "And now?" "Now I'm here with you," I whispered, turning to face her. "And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." The kiss started gentle but quickly deepened. Rose's hands slid under my shirt, tracing patterns that made me shiver. The dogs, sensing privacy was needed, retreated to their beds in the corner. What followed was a revelation of touch and taste, of whispered words and shared breaths. Rose's scars told stories under my fingers, and she wrote new ones on my skin. We moved together like waves, finding a rhythm that felt like coming home. Later, wrapped in tangled sheets and moonlight, Rose traced lazy circles on my back. "I haven't let anyone this close since coming back," she admitted. "I'm honored," I said, meaning it. "It's terrifying," she continued. "Giving someone the power to hurt you." I propped myself up on an elbow, meeting her eyes. "I would never—" "I know," she smiled, pulling me down for another kiss. "That's what makes it scarier." We fell into a comfortable silence, listening to the city sounds outside. The dogs had returned, settling at the foot of the bed like furry guardians. "Stay," I whispered, half asleep. "Always," she replied, her arms tightening around me. The next morning, watching Rose make coffee in my kitchen, wearing one of my old t-shirts, I realized how domestic it felt. How right? She caught me staring and smiled, that special smile that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "What?" she asked, passing me a mug. "Just thinking about how sometimes the best things come from broken places." She understood, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like coffee and promise. We were both carrying scars, visible and hidden, but maybe that's what made us fit so perfectly together. 2 imperfect pieces creating something whole. The morning sun painted everything in gold, and for the first time in years, I felt completely, utterly at peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. Sunday dinners at my parents' house had always been a Mitchell family tradition. I'd skipped the last few weeks, making excuses about work and emergencies at the clinic, but after 3 months of dating Rose, I knew it was time. "You sure about this?" Rose asked as we pulled up to the colonial-style house in the suburbs. "No," I admitted, squeezing her hand. "But I'm sure about you." My sister Katie spotted us first, rushing out to the driveway. "Finally," she exclaimed, hugging me. "I was starting to think you'd gone into witness protection." She turned to Rose, eyeing her appreciatively. "So you're the mysterious woman who's been making my sister smile like an idiot." "Katie," I hissed, but Rose just laughed. "Guilty as charged," she said, shaking Katie's hand. Inside, Mom was setting the table while Dad carved the roast. The familiar scene made my heart ache. Everything looked the same, but everything was about to change. "Mom, Dad," I started, my voice shakier than I'd like. "This is Rose Russell, my girlfriend." The word hung in the air like smoke. Mom's hand froze mid-reach for the salt shaker. Dad's carving knife stopped mid-slice. "Your what?" Mom's voice could have frozen hell. "Girlfriend," I repeated, stronger this time. Rose's steady presence beside me felt like armor. "I thought we discussed this phase of yours in college," Mom said tightly. "It wasn't a phase then, and it's not a phase now." Dad cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should sit down and eat." Dinner was excruciating. Mom peppered Rose with pointed questions about her background. Each answer met with thin-lipped disapproval. "Military service? How? Interesting. And now you work as a bouncer?" "Security consultant," Rose corrected politely. "I own my own firm." "She saved my life during an armed robbery," I added. "Armed robbery?" Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "At that bar job you insist on keeping?" "See," Mom jumped in. "This is exactly why you should quit that dangerous position. Find a nice man, settle down properly." "Mom," Katie warned, but the dam had broken. "I won't sit here and watch you throw your life away," Mom continued. "What will people think? What about children?" "That's enough." Rose's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stood, her presence commanding the room. "I respect that you're Gianna's parents, but I won't let you talk to her like this." "How dare you?" Mom started. "I love your daughter," Rose continued calmly. "She's brilliant, compassionate, and stronger than you give her credit for. She saves lives every day at her clinic. She works hard to pay off her education. And yes, she loves me, another woman. None of these things make her less worthy of respect." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad studied his plate while Mom looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Katie broke the tension with a slow clap. "Damn well said." "Catherine!" Mom snapped. "What?" Someone had to say it. Katie turned to us. "I think you guys make a cute couple." Tears pricked my eyes as I looked at my baby sister. At least someone in my family was in my corner. The rest of dinner passed in strained silence. As we prepared to leave, Dad pulled me aside. "Give your mother time," he said quietly. "And be careful at that bar." It wasn't acceptance, but it was something. In the car, Rose finally relaxed her military straight posture. "That went terribly?" I suggested. "I was going to say interestingly." She took my hand. "You okay?" I thought about Mom's disapproval, Dad's awkward attempt at connection, Katie's support. "Yeah," I realized. "I am. Because I have you." Rose pulled me across the console and kissed me, soft and sweet. Always. Driving home, I felt lighter despite everything. Coming out to my family hadn't gone perfectly, but with Rose by my side, I felt invincible. Sometimes love means standing your ground, even when it feels like the ground is crumbling beneath you. Besides, I thought with a smile, watching Rose sing along to the radio, some things are worth fighting for. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was performing a routine spay. Rose had been acting strange for days, checking her phone more often than usual, having hushed conversations I couldn't quite hear. "Babe," she called from the living room that evening. "We need to talk." Those words never meant anything good. I found her sitting on the couch, laptop open, Storm's head in her lap. "My firm got offered a contract," she started, fingers absently scratching behind Storm's ears. "Private security detail for a humanitarian mission. 3 months in Eastern Europe." The world tilted sideways. 3 months? "The pay is incredible," she continued. "Enough to expand the business significantly when I return." "When do you leave?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. 2 weeks. I sat heavily on the couch, Max immediately pressing against my legs. "Were you going to consult me about this?" "I'm telling you now," she said carefully. "Telling me, not asking me. The distinction felt important somehow. Rose closed her laptop. Gianna, this is my career, the kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. And what about us? What about everything we've built here? It's only 3 months, she reasoned. We can video call, text. In a conflict zone? With spotty communication at best? I stood up, needing to move. What if something happens to you? I've done this before. I know how to handle myself. That was before us. I gestured between us, words failing. Rose caught my hand, pulling me back down. Before I had someone to come home to? Exactly. Tears threatened, but I fought them back. That's why I have to do this, she said softly, to build something worthy of our future. We could build it together, here. The business needs this contract to grow, to become more than just local security work. I pulled away, anger rising. So, this is about money? It's about creating something sustainable, something that could support both of us, maybe even that animal sanctuary you dream about. She had me there. The sanctuary had been my pipe dream for years, always just out of financial reach. I can't ask you to give up your dreams, I said finally. But I can't pretend I'm okay with this either. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of tense conversations and tearful makeups. We'd argue about the danger, about the distance, about her making unilateral decisions. Then we'd fall into each other's arms, loving more desperately as time ran out. The morning she left, the airport was quiet, dawn barely breaking over the mountains. Rose wore her tactical gear, looking every inch the professional soldier. I'll call as soon as I land, she promised. You better. I tried to smile, failed. Take care of Storm for me? She glanced at the Husky sitting obediently beside Max. Of course. We stood there awkwardly, neither wanting to say goodbye. Finally, Rose pulled me close, kissing me like she was trying to memorize the feeling. I love you, she whispered against my lips. I love you too, I managed. Please be safe. Always am. I watched her walk through security, straight-backed and confident. She turned once, gave a small wave. Then she was gone. Driving home, her dog tags pressed against my chest where they hung on a chain, her parting gift. The morning sun caught the metal, sending flashes across the dashboard like Morse code. Max and Storm huddled close that night as I lay in our too-empty bed. My phone buzzed with a text. Made it to first stopover, missing you already. I pressed my face into her pillow, breathing in her fading scent. 3 months suddenly felt like forever. Come back to me, I whispered to the darkness. The dogs whined softly in response, as if they too felt the weight of her absence. Outside, Aurora's lights twinkled like distant stars, and somewhere across the ocean, the woman I loved was heading into uncertainty. Life developed a new rhythm in Rose's absence. Our weekly video calls became my lifeline, though the time difference meant sacrificing sleep. I'd wake at odd hours, Storm and Max curled around me, to see her face on my laptop screen. The mission's going well, she'd say, careful not to reveal too much. The local staff appreciates our presence. I learned to read between the lines, to notice the new tension in her shoulders, the shadows under her eyes. But she'd always smile, ask about the clinic, the dogs, my family. Katie visits more often now, I told her during one call. I think she's appointed herself my official cheerer-upper. Good, Rose laughed. Someone needs to make sure you're not working too hard. The connection wasn't always great. Sometimes her image would freeze, her voice breaking up mid-sentence. Those moments sent my heart racing, even though I knew it was just bad internet. Sorry, she'd say when the signal cleared. The infrastructure here isn't the best. We developed codes. The weather's rough meant increased tension in the region. Lots of paperwork translated to security threats. I hated the diplomatic dancing, but understood the necessity. Then came the week when she missed our regular call. I tried not to panic. Time differences, technical issues, busy schedules. There could be dozens of innocent explanations. But something felt wrong. The news confirmed my fears. Reports of increased unrest in the region where Rose was stationed, attacks on humanitarian missions, communications blackouts. Katie found me glued to international news channels. Storm and Max pressed anxiously against me. She's trained for this, my sister reminded me. She knows what she's doing. Days passed without word. I threw myself into work, taking extra shifts at both the clinic and the bar, anything to keep my mind occupied. Dr. Mitchell? Sarah's voice pulled me from a particularly detailed chart review. There's someone from the State Department on line 1. My blood turned to ice. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone. Ms. Mitchell? This is regarding Rose Russell's security detail. I gripped the edge of my desk, knuckles white. Is she? There was an incident at the mission site. Communications are currently compromised. We're working to re-establish contact. But is she alive? My voice cracked. Last confirmed contact indicated all security personnel were evacuating to a safe location. That's all I can share at this time. The next days blurred together. I moved through them like a ghost, jumping at every phone notification, every knock at the door. Storm seemed to sense my distress, barely leaving my side. Katie practically moved in, forcing me to eat, to sleep, to keep functioning. No news is good news, she'd say. They'd tell us if... She never finished that sentence. We both knew what she meant. A week after the blackout, my phone buzzed at 3 a.m. An unknown international number. Gianna? Rose's voice was rough, tired, but alive. Oh, thank God, I breathed, sliding down the wall as my legs gave out. Are you okay? I'm fine. Can't say much, but we're secure now. Had to go dark for a while. I thought. I couldn't finish, tears finally breaking free. I know, baby, I'm so sorry. She paused, background noise crackling. I have to go, but I'm okay, I promise. I love you. I managed. Love you too. Always. After we hung up, I sat on the floor. Rose's dog tags clutched in my hand, both dogs pressed close. Dawn was breaking over Aurora, painting the sky in shades of hope. She was alive. For now, that had to be enough. But as relief faded, something else took its place. A deep, burning certainty that I couldn't do this again. Couldn't live with this fear, this helplessness. When Rose came home, we'd need to talk about what came next. If she came home. No. When? I had to believe in when. The call came at midnight, 2 weeks before Rose's scheduled return. Katie was staying over again, both of us dozing on the couch with some mindless movie playing. Ms. Mitchell? A clipped professional voice. This is regarding Rose Russell. She's being evacuated to Aurora Medical Center. The world stopped. What happened? Non-critical injuries sustained during an extraction. Her team completed the mission successfully. I was already grabbing my keys, Katie right behind me. The dog sensed our panic, whining at the door. Stay, I ordered, my voice shaking. Katie? I'll watch them, she promised. Go. The hospital corridors felt endless. A military liaison met me at the entrance, leading me through security doors to a private wing. Ms. Russell insisted on being transferred here rather than a military facility, he explained. She's stable but sedated. Nothing prepared me for seeing her. Rose lay still against white sheets, her tanned skin pale under fluorescent lights. Bandages wrapped her left shoulder and torso. An IV dripped steadily beside her. Hey, soldier, I whispered, taking her hand. Her fingers twitched in mine. Slowly, those blue eyes I'd missed so much blinked open. You should see the other guys, she mumbled, managing a weak smile. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. What happened? Ambush during evacuation. Had to ensure civilian safety. Her words slurred slightly from medication. Caught some shrapnel. Nothing major. Nothing major? I touched her bandaged shoulder gently. You could have died. But I didn't. She squeezed my hand. I promised I'd come back. The nurse came in to check vitals, explaining the injuries in clinical terms. 3 pieces of shrapnel, successfully removed. No major organ damage. Expected full recovery with physical therapy. I stayed through the night, watching her chest rise and fall, afraid she'd disappear if I looked away. Dawn found us both awake, the air heavy with unspoken words. I can't do this again, I finally said. I know. Rose shifted, wincing. That's why I'm done with overseas work. I looked up sharply. What? The mission succeeded, the contract's complete, and I. She paused, reaching for my hand. I realized something while I was away. What's that? That no mission, no contract is worth losing this. Losing you. My heart stuttered. Rose, let me finish. She struggled to sit up. I've spent my life running toward danger, trying to prove something. But lying there, bleeding, all I could think about was getting home to you. Tears spilled down my cheeks. You scared me so badly. I know, baby. I'm sorry. She pulled me closer, ignoring her injuries. That's why I'm restructuring the firm. Local contracts only. No more conflict zones. Are you sure? Your career. My career can adapt. My heart can't take being away from you again. What followed was a blur of emotion and sensation. Her lips found mine, tasting of hospital antiseptic and coming home. The kiss deepened until the heart monitor's beeping increased alarmingly. A nurse cleared her throat from the doorway. Ms. Russell needs rest. We broke apart, laughing softly. Rose's eyes sparkled despite her pallor. Stay? She asked. Always, I promised. Later that evening, I brought the dogs for a supervised visit. Storm nearly knocked over an IV stand in his excitement. Max was more restrained, resting his head gently on Rose's good arm. My whole family, she murmured sleepily. Watching her drift off, surrounded by our furry guardians, I felt something settle in my chest. The constant fear of the past 3 months finally began to fade. She was home. She was staying. Everything else we could figure out together. Outside the window, Aurora's lights twinkled like stars, promising new beginnings. Rose's hand was warm in mine, her breathing steady and sure. This time, when she promised forever, I believed it completely. Recovery brought its own kind of intimacy. I watched Rose rebuild her strength. Stubborn determination written in every line of her body. Physical therapy sessions left her frustrated but never defeated. She approached healing like a mission, with focused intensity. You don't have to hover, she'd say, catching me watching her exercises. I'm not hovering, I'm admiring the view. Between her recovery and my work, we spent most of our time at my place. It just made sense to make it official. Move in with me, I said one evening, watching her sort through another box of takeout. She paused, chopsticks halfway to her mouth. You sure? The dogs already think they live together. Might as well make it official. The next weeks were a blur of boxes and furniture rearrangement. Rose's minimalist military precision met my organized chaos. Somehow, it worked. Her tactical gear found a home next to my veterinary techs. Her sleek modern furniture complemented my cozy pieces. Meanwhile, Rose was transforming her security firm. Local contracts started rolling in, high-end events, corporate security, private protection. She hired more staff, including several veterans she'd served with. It's different, she admitted one night. But good different. Building something here feels right. The real surprise came during Thanksgiving. Mom actually called, not texted. Your father and I would like you both to come to dinner, she said stiffly. If you're available. Rose squeezed my hand as we walked up the familiar driveway. This time, Dad met us at the door. Rose, he nodded. Heard about your injury. Glad you're recovering. Inside, Mom had outdone herself. The table groaned with food, including, I noticed with shock, Rose's favorite apple pie. Katie mentioned you liked it, Mom said. Not quite meeting our eyes. Dinner wasn't perfect. Mom still asked pointed questions about our future, but they were different questions now. Will you be staying in Aurora long term? She asked Rose. Yes, ma'am. My business is here now. My home is here. Mom nodded slowly. Well, the property values in your neighborhood are quite good. It wasn't acceptance exactly, but it was progress. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside. Your mother's trying, he said quietly. Rose's injury. It made us realize some things. Like what? Like life's too short for judgment. And, he cleared his throat, she makes you happy. We can see that. The dogs adapted to our merged household with surprising ease. Storm claimed the bay window as his lookout post, while Max preferred the new oversized dog bed Rose insisted on buying. One Sunday morning, I woke to find Rose's side of the bed empty. Following the smell of coffee, I found her on our small balcony, watching the sunrise. Penny for your thoughts? I wrapped my arms around her from behind. Just thinking about how different everything is from a year ago. She turned in my embrace. I was so focused on the next mission, the next contract. Now? Now I'm planning security for charity galas instead of evacuation routes. Having Sunday dinners with your family, arguing about whose turn it is to walk the dogs. Disappointed? She kissed me softly. Exactly the opposite. For the first time, I feel like I'm building something that matters. The morning light caught her hair, turning it to gold. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost overseas. Her strength returned, but softer somehow. Less tactical, more tangible. Inside, the dogs started their morning symphony of whines and tail thumps, our signal that breakfast was overdue. Duty calls, Rose laughed. Watching her move through our shared space, greeting our dogs, wearing my old college sweatshirt, I felt a profound sense of rightness. We'd built this together, this home, this life, this love. The scars on her shoulder were still pink, a reminder of what we'd almost lost. But they were fading, like the memories of those fearful months apart. What remained was stronger, tempered by distance and danger and homecoming. This was our new mission, and we were acing it. Spring came to Aurora in a burst of mountain wildflowers. Rose had been planning something, I could tell. Secret phone calls, mysterious meetings, that slight smile she got when she was up to something. "Pack for the weekend," she said one Thursday evening. "Dress warm. Where are we going?" "Trust me?" The drive into the mountains was beautiful. Rose navigated the winding roads with easy confidence, our dogs dozing in the back seat. We climbed higher, leaving the city behind. "Remember our first real date?" she asked, glancing over. "After the robbery, when you took me hiking to clear my head?" She nodded. "That trail changed my life. Because you twisted your ankle and I had to play doctor? Because that's when I knew I was in love with you." The trail looked different in spring, dotted with purple and yellow blooms. We hiked slowly, enjoying the crisp mountain air. Rose insisted on carrying the heavy backpack despite my protests. "Your shoulder is fully healed," she finished. "Stop worrying." The dogs bounded ahead, their energy endless. Storm occasionally circled back to check on us, ever the protective service dog. "Almost there," Rose said as we approached our favorite viewpoint. Dark clouds were gathering over the distant peaks. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of coming snow. "Maybe we should head back," I suggested. "Not yet." Rose pressed on, determination in every step. The first snowflakes began to fall as we reached the overlook. The city sprawled below us, lights starting to twinkle in the gathering dusk. "Rose. Wait." She set down the backpack, pulling out a thick blanket. "Help me with this." We spread the blanket on a relatively flat rock. The snow was falling faster now, big fluffy flakes that melted on contact. "You're crazy," I laughed, as she pulled out thermoses of hot chocolate. "Crazy about you." She handed me a cup, then reached back into the bag. My heart stopped when I saw the small velvet box. "Rose, let me do this right." She took my hand, snow gathering in her blonde hair. "This spot, this view, this is where I first let myself believe in a future that wasn't defined by missions and danger." The dogs settled on either side of us, as if they knew the importance of the moment. "You changed everything, Gianna. You showed me that strength isn't just about facing danger. It's about being brave enough to love, to stay, to build something real." She opened the box, revealing 2 rings, simple platinum bands with tiny diamonds that caught what little light remained. "I had this whole speech planned," she continued, voice shaking slightly, "about how you're my home, my safety, my everything. But looking at you now, in this snow, with our furry children watching, I was crying now, tears mixing with snowflakes. "Just ask me," I whispered. "Marry me?" She pulled me close, her breath warm against my cold cheeks. "Build a life with me, a real one, right here in Aurora?" "Yes," I breathed against her lips. "Yes to everything." The kiss tasted of snow and hot chocolate and forever. Above us, the clouds parted just enough to reveal the first stars, and something else, the shimmer of northern lights, rare this far south. "Did you plan this too?" I asked, gesturing at the light show. "I'm good, but not that good." She slipped the ring onto my finger, then let me do the same for her. The storm was picking up. We should have headed back, but neither of us moved. Rose pulled me closer, wrapping us both in an emergency blanket from her ever-present tactical gear. Storm and Max huddled close, creating a warm circle of family. The lights danced overhead, painting the snow in ethereal colors. "I love you," Rose whispered. "Even when you're being a worried veterinarian." "I love you too," I replied, "even when you're being a dramatic ex-soldier." We stayed until the cold forced us to move, making our way back down the trail by headlamp. The rings felt right on our fingers, like they'd always been there. Sometimes the best moments come wrapped in snowstorms and surprise. Sometimes love looks like two women and two dogs, finding their way home in the dark, together. We chose autumn for the wedding, when the Colorado mountains painted themselves in gold and crimson. The ceremony was small, held in our backyard under strings of twinkling lights. Katie had transformed the space into something magical, with wildflowers and vintage lanterns everywhere. "You clean up nice," she teased, adjusting Rose's tie. Rose wore a tailored white suit that made her look like some kind of modern-day prince. I chose a simple cream dress that made her eyes go wide when she first saw me. "Breathe, soldier," I whispered as we met at our makeshift altar. Mom surprised everyone by offering to help with the flowers. Dad walked me down the aisle, his eyes suspiciously wet. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said, kissing my cheek. The dogs wore bow ties, sitting perfectly behaved beside Katie during the ceremony. Storm only broke protocol once, to bark excitedly during our first kiss as wives. Instead of a traditional reception, we had a backyard barbecue. Rose's security team mixed with my veterinary staff, sharing stories and laughter. Even Mom relaxed enough to dance with Rose's former commanding officer. "Thank you," I overheard her say to Rose, "for making her so happy." Later, as the party wound down, Rose pulled me aside. "I have something to show you." She led me to the front yard, where a small sold sign stood in front of the property next door. "You didn't." "I did." She wrapped her arms around me from behind. "It's perfect for what we need." The neighboring property had been vacant for months, its large lot overgrown but full of potential. "The Aurora Animal Sanctuary," she continued. "Has a nice ring to it, right?" I turned in her arms, speechless. "The security firm's doing well," she explained. "And I may have had some help from investors who believe in your dream." "Our dream," I corrected, pulling her into a kiss that tasted of champagne and possibility. The next months flew by in a whirlwind of permits and renovations. Rose's military precision proved invaluable in project management. My veterinary connections helped establish protocols and partnerships. Opening day dawned clear and cool. The transformed property gleamed with new kennels, a state-of-the-art clinic, and spacious play areas. Rose's security systems ensured everything was safe and monitored. "Ready?" she asked, holding my hand as we prepared to cut the ribbon. Our families stood together, watching proudly. Katie had her camera ready. The dogs sat at attention, as if they knew the importance of the moment. "More than ready," I replied. The sanctuary filled quickly with rescued animals. Rose's security firm provided jobs for veterans who found healing in working with the animals. My clinic expanded to serve both our rescues and the community. One evening, watching the sunset from our porch, I found Rose lost in thought. "Penny for them?" "Just thinking about paths," she said, pulling me close. "How the scariest ones sometimes lead us home." Below us, Storm and Max played with the sanctuary's newest residents. The lights of Aurora twinkled in the distance. From the sanctuary came the peaceful sounds of animals settling in for the night. "Dance with me?" Rose stood, holding out her hand. "There's no music." "We'll make our own." We swayed together on the porch, our rings catching the last light of day. Everything we'd built together, our home, the sanctuary, our love, felt solid and real and perfect. "Happy?" she murmured against my hair. "More than." I lifted my face for a kiss. "You?" Beyond words. The stars emerged one by one above us. Somewhere in the sanctuary, a dog barked joyfully. Rose's arms tightened around me, strong and sure. This was our story, not just of love, but of building something bigger than ourselves, of finding home in unexpected places, and making it better than we found it. Together.